What's going on, guys? Welcome to Brand New Classics, and here we kind of strive to provide quality products so that you can bring your classic vehicle back to life and kind of drive it like your daily driver. So we have a research and development vehicle in the shop. It's basically a 49 to 54 Chevy Car. So today we're going to show you our brake kit, which is kind of like a bolt-on kit, bolts onto the firewall. I have kind of removed some stuff already, you know, your factory inspection plate. I have taken it off, and unfortunately I threw it away, so I can't show you how to take that off today, but it's just a few screws. And then it does interfere with the fresh air vent, so we are going to take that off. Unfortunately, out here in California, it does get warm, so we do want AC in our vehicles, and I don't have much use for an AC vent, so I do apologize, but it is a nice brake kit, and we'll show you how it actually bolts on. If you want to wander over to the table, we'll take a look at what it comes with and what you need to put it on. So you can get the kit a couple of different ways. All the red stuff is what we would call a basic bracket kit. So you can purchase that and bolt it into your car and have all the mechanical stuff taken care of. And then I simply just get on Speedway Motors and order an 8-inch dual diaphragm booster. And then I actually prefer you guys to go to O'Reilly's or AutoZone and pick up the master so that you can have the warranty under your phone number and your name. But either way, it doesn't matter. I can provide the booster and the master and the pedal assembly, or we can break it down into separate kits. So it comes with all the hardware, brake light switch. If you let me know you're running a 4L60, I'll provide a 4-wire switch so that it communicates with your torque converter, so it unlocks when you're at a stoplight or on the brake pedal. And then we do have a return spring. It has the hole on the pedal already and will connect to the bottom of the dash, one of the factory bolts. There's the brake pedal bracket switch, or the brake switch bracket. And then this is going to replace your factory inspection plate. These are 2 under dash braces. The firewall was not designed to support the weight of your foot pushing on it, so these are going to tie into the dash and the bottom of the pedal assembly, so it really stiffens up the firewall, so we don't have to worry about that poking through. If we come over here, we have kind of some basic tools. It's almost bolt-in. Some of the stuff you don't need. You can either use like an air grinder with a small 2-inch wheel, or you can use a grinder to do some stuff. But pretty simple, just a drill, a few different size drill bits, a hole saw, a couple size Allens. I do provide button head Allens in the kit. So if you don't want that, you can put standard 1/4-inch bolts in and use a 7/16. 7/16 half extension ratchet. 3/4 are for the brake light switch. The 9/16 is going to be for the pedal pivot or the eyelet. So I guess let's grab our first piece. We'll start with this piece. So after you've removed the factory inspection cover, you know what, I wish I would have bought some regular nuts. I put nylocks on the bench, which is going to make me very difficult to tighten some stuff up. But so after you've taken that off, this is simply going to bolt in. So what I do is I use the factory screws, the factory bow tie screws, put all the screws back in this plate. And then one at a time, you're going to grab the drill and drill the hole out with a 1/4-inch. So this button head Allen actually fits through the hole, because they're just a sheet metal screw. We do not want to rely on the sheet metal screw to hold that thing to the firewall. So I apologize I don't have the screws, because I've already drilled out my holes. But if you can imagine all the factory screws with the little bow ties are holding these in, you're going to take one out at a time and chase it with a 1/4-inch drill bit. After you've drilled that one out, actually put a bolt in it and tighten it up. And then remove the next screw and then drill another hole, put the bolt in, and tighten it up. And then kind of bounce around. Remove one screw, drill it, put the bolt in and tighten it up. Remove one, drill it, bolt it in, tighten it up. Let me grab one more bolt real quick. I'm going to grab 2 nuts out of the bolt bin. So I apologize, we're trying to make this quick, so I'm just going to put a couple of bolts in. That makes it easy, you can reach around. That way you don't need two people. So now the hard part might be crawling under the dash and locating the rest of the pedal, but I wanted to make that easy. So what you do on the next step is you actually grab the pedal assembly, 2 5/16 or 4 5/16 bolt. I sent a couple extra for mock-up. You're actually going to kind of bolt this on the outside. Use the 2 upper bolts. And it's going to go like this. So now that's that there, you can use that to locate your other holes. So there's no measuring or struggling under the dash. I did provide these because I'd like you to put all 4 of them in. Now also, this plate does have some wiggle side to side, so you do want to double check because your pedal will actually move a little bit. It just has a slight bit of adjustment. So double check to make sure it's square. But now that you have it bolted on the outside, you can take like a paint marker or a Sharpie, and you'll kind of get an idea like, okay, there's where I need the booster input hole. There's my other 2 holes that I need to drill to hold the booster. So now you've easily marked your other holes that you need to do. You can unbolt this pedal assembly, set it off to the side. You're going to grab a 2 3/8 hole saw. The booster has a 2 1/4, but I don't want it to be too tight off, so I always step it up like 1/8 of an inch and drill it out just a tad bigger. So on every car I've done, there's actually a little factory dimple here, and you'll find that it almost marks the center of the hole saw. So that's your next step, is to get in there and hole saw that out. I've already hole sawed it out, so I have a piece of cardboard back there to give you a visual. So once you've had that hole sawed out, the next step is you are going to take that plate off one more time. Did I get the nut off? Oh, she's just tight. Oh, you know what? I was looking for one of those factory bow ties. There's one right there. So that's what you're going to use to hold it originally. Just put your factory screws back in. And I get those out with a flathead screwdriver if you have the right one. Tends to be a Craftsman. So set the plate off to the side. So you now have your hole drilled. But we might as well just get in and kind of nip the rest of that out. There's really no need to have all that extra stuff in there. So I generally do it with a 4-inch. I'm sorry the nut is missing because we were doing some stuff yesterday. But you'll just get in there and make a quick little zip. And then come over here and do a little zip. Kind of cut it at a nice sexy angle. And then what you're left with is kind of that. You don't have to nip that extra stuff out. I always do. Now you can kind of imagine, make sure your booster fits through your holes. Okay. So now that you have that cut out, you do need to drill the other 2 holes that we marked on the bottom, which are very close to that fresh air vent. I am working on a plate that's going to block this off. That's going to be 1/8 inch thick to stiffen that area up a little more as well. So now that you have that cut, we'll actually bolt this plate in kind of for the last time. And I did fail to plan ahead and grab regular nuts. So I'm going to walk over to the bolt bin and grab some regular nuts real quick. I put the nylocks on the bench. So when I ship these kits, I do put anti-seize on the stainless bolts because I don't want you guys to have problems with the stuff seizing up on you. So you'll look like the Tin Man by the time you get these put in. nuts. I don't want to reach for that other one, so we're going to put a black one in there. So if you're reach in, spin the nuts on, get everything tight. I did forget to mention also that this plate, they make some nice 3M like strip caulk. And I like to lace the back, this edge with the strip caulk before I bolt it in. That way if you ever power wash the car or the engine, you don't get any water dripping in between the plate. Or silicone, anything to maybe seal it up the last time you bolt it on when you know you're done. After all the work, we'll probably never squirt it down with a hose, but just in case. I'd hate to get water on the fresh carpet, especially if it's that peanut butter. All right, so all those screws are on. And now we're ready to actually crawl under the dash and bolt that under dash unit in. So the first two top bolts are actually going to bolt the under dash unit in. Which are going to be these two button head bolts, the 5/16. In the kit, I'm going to provide two extra bolts just for a quick moment, because I want all the holes to line up before you tighten these two. That way all four of your booster bolts go through nice and easy. If you tighten these up without these two in, it tends to jiggle around a little and the booster doesn't want to bolt in smoothly. Actually, I do want to make a point to show you on the back side of this. You'll see I have a couple of washers, or a handful of washers tacked here, and some thick spacers. That's to compensate for some of the stamping change. If you look under the dash, the firewall actually steps and changes shape quite a few areas. So I've welded those on to compensate for the steps. I don't want you to just bolt it in and crush everything. We kind of want to bolt it in and leave it natural. Had to grab some other nuts. This is kind of a tight fit. Oh, imagine that. Two people is definitely beneficial. We're going to get one nut started so we don't accidentally drop or fall off. Yep, thank you. So I always start two top bolts. I'm sorry, gentlemen, we're moving a little fast. I'm going to slow down and take this off. I want to show you one more thing that I forgot to show you. Let me grab a flashlight. Oh, we were not prepared. All right, so there's a little lip under the dash. You can see it steps out about I don't know, 3/16 of an inch, almost a 1/4 of an inch, and it comes down here. Well, we want that plate to sit flat. So what I do is get in with a little 2-inch or the 4-inch grinder and sand that little lip off so it's kind of flat. Sand it all the way up there until it doesn't interfere. So it's kind of from about there all the way down to there. That way that bracket sits on kind of nice and flat without squishing or flexing or torquing any of that stuff. Sometimes a chunk of that comes off. Well, that's what the washers are for. You can see this big step, that's like a 1/4 inch step. So the big washers are on the bottom to compensate for that big step. And then the washers up here to compensate for the 2 pieces of sheet metal that are on there. So now we can bolt it in. Once you actually sand all that off, now you can bolt the bracket in. So there, we got our 2 tops started. You can put the other 2 in the bottom. Just kind of leave everything snug. So that's the pedal assembly. We got 2 bolts in it so far. You can put 2 more in the middle, or let's just jump straight to the booster and get the booster bolted in. So when you get your booster from Speedway, it's going to look a little something like this. And we have a little eyelet. It's just going to thread on. And you pretty much thread it on until about bottoms out. Now I've designed it so it bottoms out, and then you have to fine tune it a little bit. So you're probably going to back it off so there's about 1/8 or 1/4 of threads in there. And then you simply just slide it in. I put 1 nut on the booster if you can. You should also do me a favor and hold that. Thank you. So once you get the 4 nuts on the booster, thank you, you're good. Now the nuts on the booster are a 13 millimeter. Unfortunately, they do come from over there. So let me grab that 13. We're going to snug that up. You're good. You can let go. Kind of go around in a nice even pattern. Make sure the booster is seating properly in the bracket. Maybe do a little jiggle. So there's 6 main bolts. Get all 6 of those tight, and then we'll move on to the next part. All right, so there's the pedal assembly bolted in. You can see in comparison to the factory pedal. So these do not work with stick shift cars or 3 on the tree. But it does move it over to this side. It gives you a little bit more room on this side for a gas pedal. If you're doing a small block or LS, the e-brake doesn't work, so it usually comes out. So let's move. Let me grab the rest of the pedal pivot stuff, and we'll show you how that bolts in. I put all nylocks on the table. Let me grab a regular nut. So this is a little barrel, and this is going to pivot in the eye. So you basically put a washer on. the barrel, and I put grease on this. Grease this barrel, grease the inside of it, because it is going to kind of pivot a little bit. And you poke it through the eye, line it up with the top hole. It drops into the pivot. Put your nut on. And then there's your booster is now hitting. So the adjustment on the eyelet will stop that pedal from hitting if you twist it off like 2 or 3 more turns. Your next thing is the return spring. This is kind of a universal unit from McFadden's, and it hooks on the bottom hole of the pedal. And then you literally just stretch it to the factory steering column U-bolt. And then there's another nut that goes on top of the spring and holds that in place so it doesn't accidentally pop off. That way your brake pedal returns every time. There you go. If you want to get in there and look at that spring at where it attaches on that little stud. So then next is your brake light switch. So before you do the brake light switch, you want to actually adjust the pedal so that it doesn't hit the floor. So I'm going to get in and I should have did that before the spring. I'm in a hurry. So we're just going to back this little eyelet off a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 turns. And then we'll pop that back in. So that's about full travel on the booster and the master. You don't have any more of that. Once you bleed, you're never going to go past that. So again, on the brake light switch, we have 2 different ones. We have like a normal brake light, 2-wire for your standard like small block Chevy and turbo 350 or 400 transmissions. And then for the more modern guys, we have a 4-wire. So that way it communicates with your 4L60 or 700 R4. So this bracket just bolts into the upper hole, like kind of the one in the middle. And you'll kind of leave that a little bit loose because when you put the brake light switch in, you're going to kind of swing it up and down so that it sits nice and flat. These nuts on these brake light switches are a 1/2 Sometimes they're a pain to get started. Oh, there it wants to start, no problem. But for some reason up in there, it wants to struggle. Alright, so a little board mission on that. We're not doing too good on this install video, are we? Normally the nut is not that difficult to get started. Normally they start, but for some reason this one's, it is just a plastic switch. There we go. We'll back this out a little so that we got enough room to adjust it later. So with the pedal all the way up, you can see that the button's not being touched. So you'll adjust your nut. Oh, and this is the one I took to Pomona and it got a little booger up. Let me grab a wrench real quick. So the button sits flat on the pedal about right there. So once you have that adjusted, you can check the brake lights with power if you'd like. And then I think last is the under dash braces. So I do try to fit these to the car before I ship them. And they are only 1/4-inch holes. You may have to drill the hole out bigger because not every dash is welded in the exact same spot. So it may be a little off or closer or farther away than the one I have in the shop. Well, these bolt into the last hole on the bottom. And we'll just swing up to the dash. That might be because I don't have anything tightened up. I didn't tighten any of that plate up. So we may... Okay, on the passenger side there is a little kick. That little kick does need to go on the bracket side. So these dash braces are a perfect example. These I actually did have bolted in the car at one time. And I'm trying to bolt this one in now and the hole doesn't line up. That may be because I did not physically tighten any of the bolts on the outside. So this one we're good. But because we skipped the tightening all the bolts on the firewall side, we may be just a tad bit off. So again, if you have to, you might have to drill the hole out a little bit bigger. That will suck up when you tighten everything. So now that it's kind of in, you can tighten it up. You may have to back that eyelid off to maybe not hit the carpet or the pedal. I don't weld pedals on. This is a factory one. You can cut yours off the original pedal and weld the factory style back on. This might have actually been off a different vehicle too. It's something I just had laying around. Or you can buy the billet aluminum one, the round one, the square one, the low car one, and just weld a 1/2-20 nut on. And the fancy billet aluminum one will bolt on. But that's pretty much it. I was kind of rushing, but I think that only took about 30 minutes or so I guess it would only take a couple hours in the shop. I do provide a little pigtail for the brake light switch as well. It's kind of long enough where you might be able to find some of the factory wiring and tie into it. I like the 90-degree electrical connectors, so I'll send those. That will maybe tend to point it up and out of the way so we're not getting involved in anything that's moving. And then again, there's a couple butt connectors, so you should be able to find some of the stuff before it goes outside the vehicle. The wires are under the dash, so if you tap into those, you'll have your factory brake lights working. So again, I apologize, that was kind of rushed and chaotic, but there's a basic rundown. Sounds good, gentlemen. So after the quick review or the quick install, if you're interested in one of these, again, this is kind of what it will look like assembled. I try to assemble it all assembled so you know where all the hardware goes and it's all set up. And there are a few extra nuts and bolts in there just for simple mock-up stuff. So again, that's what they look like. I don't weld the pedal on. I leave that open to you, billet aluminum or the factory. Now that also allows you to adjust your pedal position. You may have a different seat than I have or the next guy has, so I don't want to weld my pad on where I'm comfortable and have you not be comfortable. So I almost prefer you guys to do that. So again, that's what one looks like. We'll set it on the bench here. Another thing that we'll be working on, and there's the last kind of overview if you want to take a look at what it looks like. I like it because the master is level and the fluid, you know, goes to the top of the bowls. It does drop it down a bit. I've had small blocks and LS's in here and it does clear. Plenty of valve cover clearance. I did move it over a tiny bit. So one upgrade I'd like to do in the kit in the near future is a fresh air block off plate that kind of fits where the booster and everything is. I'd like to make it out of 1/8 inch steel, and I think by bolting it in there it'll make things a lot stiffer in the firewall area. And then also with the addition of, say, a steering column firewall plate, we've added a tremendous amount of strength to that area. So I feel confident that that brake system is never going to go anywhere. So this is going to be an upgrade coming up soon. And then another option I'd like to add to the brake kit too is brake plumbing. I like to use this factory wiring clip or brake line clip. I'm not even sure what it was. I'm pretty sure it was wiring. Probably went to the brake light switch. So if you get it like your typical Wilwood Master, I have a couple of spacers. I'm going to provide a kit that will kind of bolt this in here. And I will provide the one line that comes from the Master, kind of curly cues down and goes down to the proportioning valve. So it will simplify the job. You'll actually be able to bolt on your first brake line and your proportioning valve. And then the only thing you have to worry about is jumping down to the frame and going out back. So this will be a small upgrade in the kit coming in the future. And we got lots of other stuff coming as well, so keep an eye out for brandnewclassics.net. If you want to check out the website, or just keep your eye out for updated videos or installs or just progress in the shop. So I hope everybody happy building and cruising, hopefully more cruising than building.